Hello, good afternoon and welcome to this BBC News Facebook Live. My name's Harry Lowe.
Well, thanks for introducing me as well. I'm Jonathan Griffin. What are we talking about?
We're talking about the new Premier League season, which starts tomorrow afternoon. In fact, it starts tomorrow early afternoon. And we want to hear from you. What do you want to know about the new season that's approaching? If you do have a question for us, where should they leave the comments, Jonathan?
You can get in touch either beneath or by the side.
Depending on the format.
Exactly.
Yeah. But we're going to try and tackle some of the big talking points that have already come up in the last few days. One of them is Gary Lineker, the BBC's presenter of Match of the Day. He obviously presents various other things as well, but he said last season that if Leicester City were to win the Premier League, he would present Match of the Day in only his pants. And a lot of people have been getting quite excited about that prospect, actually.
It's funny you mention that because there's a meme that's going around at the minute and it shows, I don't know if you've seen it, maybe perhaps you have, shows two suits, either side, hung up on a kind of rack, and in the middle a pair of underpants, and it says Shearer, and it's got a suit, and then it's got Ian Wright's suit the other side, and in the middle Gary Lineker's underpants. And it's the moment that the nation is kind of tuning in for, the moment that the nation wants to see. I can't remember a pair of underpants that have been this highly contested. Everybody wants to see this moment. It's even been mentioned in the Houses of Parliament.
Yeah, for the uninitiated, Gary Lineker suggested that if Leicester were to do what he thought the impossible and win the Premier League last season, then he would present Match of the Day in his underpants, thinking quite reasonably that there was little to zero chance of this actually happening. And Leicester went and did what nobody really expected them to do. The 5,000 to 1 outsiders won the league and changed, well, certainly changed betting and possibly changed the way people view outsiders forever.
You've been looking at some of the stats, haven't you, Harry? You've been looking at the betting odds, and you've been looking at how likely that is to happen again, and you don't get odds like that anymore. That's changed.
No, it has changed, you're right. So a lot of people have bookies have cottoned on to the fact that perhaps they were a little bit blasé in thinking that Leicester couldn't win the league and setting such astonishingly high odds at the start of the season, 5,000 to 1, obviously a massive price. The best price you'll get for any team this season is £1,500 to 1 for Hull City, who, let's be honest, have been a complete shambles so far this season and show almost no signs of getting their act together and even surviving in the league, let alone winning the league. So that's an indication of...
Just a quick point on that, Harry. You've got some quite robust opinions there, and we should point out that we want to hear your robust opinions as well. You know, people are tuning in now on Facebook Live. You can leave a comment either beneath or by the side, depending on the format. Look, we'll read them out. We'll put them to Harry. Harry said that Hull haven't got a cat and hell's chance of surviving. A lot of people seem to agree with that. But if you're a Hull fan, get in touch. Let him know why he's wrong.
Yeah, let's start with Leicester because, as we said last season, they were the rank outsiders. At Christmas, even when they'd gone on a 10-game unbeaten run, they were still 33 to 1 with some bookmakers. And if you look at the pre-season predictions from the pundits this season, from the experts, hardly anybody is predicting Leicester not just to not win it, but anywhere near the top four.
That's not surprising, is it? I mean, we were talking earlier on about where people are expected to finish, and I guess one of the things we need to bring into this now is managers, because there's been a massive turnover of managers. You might have seen some of the memes that are going around online at the minute, which is sort of saying, you know, on Facebook, give your reaction to the best manager, and typically there'll be a picture of Conte, the new Chelsea manager, Mourinho, the new Man United manager, Guardiola, the new Man City manager, stalwarts like Arsene Wenger, also Pochettino had a great season last year, and of course Claudio Ranieri, and they ask you to react and say, oh, a love heart for, say, Mourinho, or perhaps a angry face for Wenger. It's been such a high turnover of managers that it's pushed Leicester almost into the background. Not many people are talking about Leicester as Premier League champions in this coming season. And so do you think they'll be able to hold on to the crown?
I certainly don't think they're going to do as badly as people expect them to. I mean, they've lost Kante, one of their key men from last season, but generally they've had quite a solid pre-season. They've got the semblance of a team that won the league last season. I mean, a lot of people say, you know, second season syndrome and all that, and teams have worked them out. But somebody like Jamie Vardy, you know, he's continued to cause problems for defences last season. 24 goals in the Premier League. I just had a quick look at the odds for the top goal scorer this season, and he's not even in the top 6 or 7. So that suggests that people don't think Leicester are going to do that well. I think they may. I don't think they'll win it again, but I certainly think they'll prove people wrong.
Look, enough of your gassing, Harry. Look, people are getting in touch, and that's the main thing. Down beneath in the comments, by the side with the comments, Paula Dunham, she's one of the first to get in touch. She says, Liverpool FC to win the league. Enough said. Do you think that's going to happen? For my sins, you might say, I'm a United fan, and I've got to say that every year I think, oh, Liverpool, no chance. But with Klopp in charge and some of the signings they've been making, they've been spending a lot of cash this transfer window, suddenly I'm a little bit more tense. What about yourself?
I mean, Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp, it's a match made in heaven, a lot of people say, and obviously he's a total media darling. The press have absolutely taken to him, and they kind of I think that he's a better manager and that Liverpool are going to be a better team because he's in charge. I think that is probably true. Are they a good enough team to win the league? I mean, on current evidence, absolutely not. Their best striker, Daniel Sturridge, who on his day is one of the best players in the land, is rarely fit, and if he is fit, he's certainly not fit for very long. And their striking options, apart from that, are pretty sparse. They've got a goalkeeper in Simon Mignolet who's proven questionable over the last few seasons, and I think those are two key parts for any team.
One of the interesting things, though, about Liverpool is that we always talk about them and are they going to be up there? And this year they spent a lot of money and they've brought in players like Mane, who are consistent Premier League performers who do quite well. But one of the interesting things, looking through the transfers that have gone on, is somebody who's become the source of a lot of memes from opposition fans. And it's this idea that Alex Manninger, who played for Arsenal best part of 14, 15 years ago, has finally come back to the Premier League, finally, some would say, and it will now be in that shake-up for the Liverpool goalkeeping jersey. You mentioned Mignolet, who has his errors, and he's certainly got a little crook in him. But if that doesn't go to plan, the next choice could well be Alex Manninger. If he makes it onto the pitch at any point during this season, it will be the biggest gap between two Premier League appearances ever. It will be at least 14 years, could well be into 15 by the time he kicks a ball.
That's a great stat. I think there's a certain nostalgia about him potentially making a reappearance. Certainly brings up memories of Arsenal being sponsored by the Sega Dreamcast, and those days when money hadn't quite taken hold of the Premier League in the way it currently does.
Now we see major money, and I should point out other gaming systems are available. Keep your comments coming down below or by the side. Look, how about this one? Is the EPL the most popular football league in the world, and if so, why?
I think it is the most popular in the world partly because it's so well marketed around the world, and the rights to show the games are. I mean, there are a few countries in the world now that you can't watch a Premier League match live. In fact, the games that are on at 3 o'clock on a Saturday here, we're one of the only countries in the world that can't actually see those games live. Most of the other countries and territories around the globe can watch them. So it's very well marketed. Obviously, there's a lot of prestige. England, kind of the home of football notionally. It is probably one of the biggest. I mean, certainly our performances, and by our, I mean British teams' performances in the Champions League in the last few seasons, hasn't been terrific and wouldn't suggest that it's necessarily the highest quality. And our England, the national team's performances certainly vindicate that that's not the case.
Look, more questions keep coming in, as you can imagine. Very, very important that you get in touch, either down below or by the side. How about this one? Right, Franco Galdino on Facebook says, Arsenal, I go there every single week, go Gunners. But is it time for Wenger to go?
I mean, it'd be a brave man to suggest that Wenger should go. And I actually think there's a lot of Arsenal fans now who reluctantly would agree that that is possibly the right thing to do. I mean, another season without a Premier League title, probably it may well do for him, I think. I mean, he's very frugal, and I think that's to be admired. Arsenal want to run their club properly and want to balance the books. But, I mean, there's certain occasions in the last few seasons where they've been crying out for a striker or a defender or a goalkeeper. Wenger has simply refused to part with the cash because he doesn't think it represents value for money. A lot will depend on their season, on how injury-free they can remain. I mean, that's been a huge thorn in their side the last seasons. Your Theo Walcotts of this world, Aaron Ramsey just completely missing.
I'll put a little.
Jack Wilshere.
I was going to put another little name on the list there in Wilshere. And Wilshere's actually injured already before we kicked a ball again. So he managed to get himself fit for the Euros, just about. Hobbled through that, and then he's broken down again. One of the things that we always see with Arsenal is a great source of memes, and We saw them last year when they finished fourth, and it was, I would say they finished second, and Tottenham finished fourth, and it was very much a case of we've got one over on Spurs. That relationship between the two clubs, very, very thorny, really, really high tension on social media. Who's going to have the better season there?
I mean, Spurs, again, another team that's not really been discussed in the mix. They were the main challengers to Leicester for the title last season. They were the team that a lot of people thought would overhaul the Foxes in the end, and they didn't obviously succeed in doing that. They've strengthened their team in lots of areas. I think they'll be there or thereabouts again. Do they have the ability to win the league? Probably not. And they don't have the experience of having won the league recently either, which again also applies to Liverpool.
You heard it here first, Tottenham fans. If you don't like what he's got to say, get in touch, comments underneath or by the side. How about this one? Look, more questions keep on coming in, Harry. This season sees some big managers, but what impact will Guardiola, Mourinho and Conte have on the league?
Yeah, it's a really good question, that one. Thanks for sending that in. I think Mourinho has built his reputation on going into places, making teams defensively very solid, and winning games and then ultimately winning trophies. And I suspect he'll probably do the same in Manchester United. Will he do it in his first season? I've actually backed them to, and I think they might just do it. They've signed Pogba, obviously huge record-breaking signing for them. They've also signed Ibrahimovic, who is the second favourite to be the Golden Boot this season. I think he's still got another good season left in him. So I think Mourinho will get on really well, and if Manchester United don't win the league, at the very least they'll be there or thereabouts, and he'll certainly shore up their defence. What about the others? What do you think? Conte, Chelsea?
Well, we don't know what to make of him, do we? One of the things about Conte that I think is going to be the source of a lot of talk on social media is his reaction to things. You know, the man lives life in the fast lane, and that's really shown on the side of the pitch. If Chelsea, in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, go on a little losing run or they get upset in a game, you're going to see that man bellowing at the side of the pitch, really calling their shots. It's going to be interesting to watch because I can't think of a dynamic manager who invests that much passion into the game, who's been around since probably Stuart Pearce. It's very, very interesting to see how the press will react to him and how opposition fans will react to him as well. You know, Vine wasn't around when Stuart Pearce was in his managerial heyday, but Vine now, if you look at somebody like Roy Hodgson, one of the most boring football managers we've ever seen, but he found himself the subject of so many different internet memes. I think you're going to see a lot of that when it comes to Conte. And
which Diego Costa is going to turn up, of course, for Chelsea. I think that's a huge factor in how well they end up performing this season. The other new managerial appointment, of course, is Pep Guardiola. Another man who plays football in the right way, very well regarded by the fans, bit of a lovey for the media. They love Guardiola. They like the way he plays football. They like the way he talks about the game. They like his philosophy, that tiki-taka football that he was playing at Barcelona was lauded as some of the best club football certainly that has ever been seen. I think he'll do well. I think he looked a bit tired actually under Pellegrini towards the end, Man City. And my prediction is, although I've said I'm backing Manchester United, if Manchester United don't win it, the team that does will be Manchester City.
You can't do that. You can't have it both ways.
No.
Pick one or the other. How many different things have we seen on the internet that says either who's going to win the league?
Either. I'm saying Manchester United will win the league, and Manchester City will come second. If Manchester United don't win the league, it will be Manchester City. But that's not what I'm predicting.
Okay. Well, as you can imagine, that position is a pretty controversial one to take, and I'm sure you've upset a couple of people out there. If you disagree with Harry, if you believe that Spurs are going to go all the way, maybe Leicester, who knows, maybe even Burnley, one of the promoted sides. You saw
the Clarets.
Yeah, you saw what happened last year and they think they've got it in them, then do get in touch and let us know.
Let's talk about the other end then, with that in mind. We've already briefly touched on Hull City's disastrous pre-season preparations. They've lost their manager. They're undergoing a takeover, and
the fans,
hardly anybody.
They've got 13 fit players, 13 fit senior outfield players to kick off with against Premier League champions. That's not going to go well tomorrow, and they look to be already in a bit of a disaster zone. I guess we should point out what we're doing, Harry.
Yes.
I mean, it's a good time now to recap.
Yes, it is. We're here with BBC Trending. This is a Facebook Live. My name's Harry Lowe. This is Jonathan Griffin. And we're encouraging you to send in your questions and thoughts ahead of the new Premier League season, which gets underway tomorrow afternoon. Less than 24 hours to go now. Absolutely, less than 24 hours to go. Already, lots of excitement. You're leaving your comments beneath or by the side, depending on which format you're watching on. And look at this. Is Man United's Paul Pogba worth £89 million? No footballer is worth £89 million, in my humble opinion.
Really? Because I disagree. I actually think that could be a bit of an investment, because the money that it will generate bringing shirt sales back to the club, United need to make a big statement now. They've been out of the loop for a little while. I was a big advocate of David Moyes. I really like David Moyes' work, even as a United fan. But I kind of feel like we've been off the boil a little bit. Big name signings, the likes of him, the likes of Ibrahimovic, they can make a difference in how the club is perceived worldwide.
Okay, so maybe in perception, but in terms of value for money, I'll take your point about him generating income as a result of shirt sales and image rights and all that kind of and sponsorship. But that is I think that is astronomical for any footballer. I mean, the sums that are thrown away around nowadays are unbelievable, and I think many people who don't follow football that closely will just be thinking to themselves, how can somebody be worth almost £100 million?
Yeah, it's a horrible sum.
Think how many problems you could solve with that money.
That's very deep and philosophical, and thank you very much for tuning in to watch this on Facebook Live. If you just caught that, this is a reflective show about football, and sometimes Harry is really intense with his emotions. Paul Pogba is actually suspended for the first game against Bournemouth, where United kick off their campaign trail to win the Premier League for the first time in, well, this will be the fourth season, won't it? You've had the years of City and Chelsea and now Leicester. So to try and reclaim that, they're going to have to do so without Paul Pogba on the first game. I guess we've not really touched upon those promoted sides.
No. We've mentioned Hull. 20th, check.
Yeah, in the dishwater there, scrabbling around. Who else is going to join?
Well, I think Middlesbrough are one of the teams that are most backed. We were talking earlier about outsiders being backed by people. Middlesbrough have come in from 1,000 to 1 to 750 to 1, which is still an unbelievably poor value price, really, considering that they're very unlikely to win it. But they have actually made some very astute signings. They've signed Negredo, of course, and they've signed
Victor Valdez
in goal. They've also got Brad Guzan, if he turns out to be a bit of a flop, which can't be ruled out given that he's not played much first-team football in the last few years. They've got some very good players, but I think they'll be absolutely fine. As for Burnley, Sean Dyche's team, they've certainly had a difficult pre-season. They've missed out on a lot of their targets. They've signed two of the team I support's players, Nick Pope, who I think is going to be an understudy goalkeeper, 24 years old, very promising, and one of the stars of the Icelandic team this summer at the Euros, Johan Bergmansson. I think he'll be very, very effective for them in midfield. He scores lots of goals. He doesn't really score tap-ins. Great at dead balls. So although he will provide some kind of attacking flair for them in midfield, and they've obviously got Andre Gray up top, I think they're going to struggle. They haven't really made any other major reinforcements that team, and obviously there are still 3 weeks to go before the transfer window slams shut, but I'd be worried as a Burnley fan at this stage.
One of the things that you mentioned there, though, is how likely things are to happen in the future. And look, if we take it back, nobody would have said Leicester last year were going to go anywhere near the Champions League Europe, let alone winning the whole competition.
Yeah, true enough. I mean, there are other teams that I think bear more scrutiny who perhaps more established, one of them being Watford. I think their second half of their season wasn't terrific. Odion Ighalo, who was so tremendous for them in the first half of the season, really sloped off, and they've got their captain Troy Deeney still scoring goals, lots of them from the penalty spot, and they've got a few other players who kind of add a sprinkling of gold dust to their team, and they've also got a very good goalkeeper, I think, in Gomez, but I think Watford are going to struggle, and you think that the team from Wales are going to struggle.
Look, Swansea, I really fear for Swansea. If you're a Swansea fan, get in touch, tell me why I'm wrong. But look, Williams has gone, your big centre-half, the man who not only brings a great presence to the back line, but also a real leadership material, somebody who, as well as making great tackles, echoes the boys' voice, really gets them motivated. They're going to struggle without that. And also losing Ayew, a man who can...
Who?
Andre Ayew, the man who's gone to West Ham, 20 million or so, I think it was. That he was capable of chipping in with goals. Without that, I know they've brought a couple of strikers in. I really fear for them. You've seen big money spent before on players. It takes time for a striker to adapt to the Premier League. I really don't fancy them. If I've got it wrong, Swansea fans, let me know. But I'm really, really scared for that club.
What about a post-Allardyce Sunderland? How do you fancy their chances this season? They're one of the favourites to be relegated.
They are.
To the bookmaker.
Yeah, they are. And if you've been reading reports overnight, then Kone supposedly has had enough with being there after about 6 or 7 months, and he's ready to go elsewhere. But look, any side that has David Moyes in charge, I believe, has a good organisational setup. You know, the guy for many years at Everton ran a very steady ship. They might not play scintillating, exciting football.
Expansive football.
Expansive football. Tiki-taka you mentioned earlier from Guardiola. It's not going to happen. But they will be very solid defensively. And pragmatic. And dare I say, earlier on, he got a loan sorted out for Adnan Januzaj, the Man United wonder kid turned not so wondrous. Who knows how that's going to work out? But I think it's going to be quite exciting for him. I wouldn't rule him out.
Yeah, so Sunderland will struggle. I think West Brom will also be struggling, but Tony Pulis should probably see them through. As for on an individual basis, let's just take a quick look at the odds for Golden Boot.
Hang on, before you get on to Golden Boot, look, the man is so relaxed. He's taking his old Golden Boots off. And what have you got?
Well, so we've got Sergio Aguero as the bookies' favourite, 7-2. Kane 13-2. Ibrahimovic 8-1. Lukaku 12. Diego Costa 16. Batshuayi 16.
Yes, that's how you pronounce his name. He's the new lad at Chelsea, Belgian.
And Giroud at 16. Then you've got Vardy 18, Sanchez 22, and Sturridge at 25, along with Sadio Mane. What of those names take your fancy there, Jonathan?
Well, I would say that I'm slightly concerned. A lot has been made, particularly online, about Ibrahimovic, and a lot of people getting excited. You've seen 100 of these memes. Even last night there were some regarding the Olympics, and Ibrahimovic is such a great swimmer. He taught Phelps to swim, and all this sort of stuff. Look, I'm slightly concerned. He's been out of the mix, playing in France. It's not the strongest league there. He's 34 years old. If he can score more than 10 to 15 goals in a season, I think that's a success. People who are saying he's going to score 20, 30, let's just moderate that, please, because I think we're putting excess pressure on a man with an already incredibly big ego, but we don't know if he's going to turn up. Let's get to some predictions, and then we'll let these people, get about their merry day. What's the end result then? So in your league table, it looks United, City...
Chelsea, Arsenal.
OK, and who's going down?
My bottom three, Watford in 18th, Burnley in 19th, and Hull being the strongest team because they're holding everybody else up above them. What about you?
I was going to ask you who's going up the other way. Is there another name that you see as capable of getting promotion at this early stage to the Premier League next season?
From the Championship? Yeah. Too early to call.
Shocking. I've already say Norwich. Norwich
no, okay, all right. If you really want to know where I put my money, I've said Derby County to win the league, with Norwich in second and Newcastle going up in third. So that's my top three for the Championship. What's your top three for the Championship, Jonathan?
Very similar, which is slightly concerning and not that interesting. Now, let's take it back in terms of who's going to win the league. I'm a United fan. I've disclosed that. I'm very excited about life under Mourinho. I am slightly concerned, though, that this isn't quite going to go to plan in the shake-up for the first season, and that's why I wouldn't necessarily say United are going to win the league. I do think that it could well be City who take the initiative, or it could be Chelsea. And for that reason, because Conte's coming in, he hasn't had a great deal of time to deal with the players, but with the Italian side, he was dealing with some really, really average players and getting the most out of them. I do think they're one of the biggest threats. So let's look at it like that. Chelsea, United, City, Arsenal, I still think will hold on to fourth, and Wenger will get another year at the job, presumably. And going down, like Swansea, so scared for them. Hull City, they're definitely bottom of the pile. And Burnley, I just haven't seen enough of Burnley's movement in the transfer window, losing somebody like Joey Barton. The replacements haven't come in quick enough and fast enough, and unfortunately I think they're going to yo-yo straight back down again.
And it's almost fate that a large green space has opened up here for us to perhaps practice a penalty. And look, I've got two shoes which will act as posts.
Yep, all right, go for it.
So we have a crack. I'm going to try and score this penalty against Jonathan. He's not known for his goalkeeping prowess, and he's set me quite a favourable goal size. So here goes.